Please welcome co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer, Airbnb, Nate Blecharczyk, in discussion with Skift founder and CEO, Rafat Ali.
Good evening, everyone. So we're here, the last session of day one. We have to do this all over again tomorrow morning. P here. We will do it. It's actually great tomorrow morning, the whole day. Thank you again. Thank you, Nathan, for being here. Nathan
Pleasure.
is the co-founder, Chief Strategy Officer of Airbnb. We were joking, but not really joking, backstage that millennials, the phrase millennials and the phrase Airbnb are the two most used phrases through the whole day today. Somebody should do a word count of the transcripts of it. I just introduced him to the Intercontinental CEO who just walked out. So obviously the most watched company one of the most watched companies on the planet, the most watched company in the travel sector. The most fascinating thing that's been happening recently is the deal you just did with Resi, which was a deal, for those of you who don't know, is bringing in bookings for restaurants inside Airbnb. Resi is a third-party company based here in New York City, a competitor to OpenTable. There's a lot of interest in that company. I think a bunch of people talked about it on stage earlier today. Danny Meyer mentioned. For the first time, so this you launched last week?
I think Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Brian is also here for that. And we did a long story on it. I read, and that's the first time it's apparent that Airbnb has a chance of potentially moving beyond travelers. Because food is, restaurants are a lot more than just travelers. Experiences, obviously, is your second extension that you did. Food is your third one. Are you thinking about potentially moving beyond travelers? A lot of what your CMO talks about is Superbrand for travel.
The immediate focus for the time being will continue to be travel. I definitely think there are numerous extensions of the business beyond travel. But I do think within travel, there's still so much to do that we do need to maintain focus. An interesting learning we've had over the last year as we've launched experiences is that there are a considerable number of local people booking experiences. So they're not travelers. They're locals who are looking to do something different over the weekend.
And considerable would be quantifying?
The double-digit percentage of the bookings. I don't know the exact number, but low double digits. So that's a learning. And in fact, just to be clear, when you book an experience on Airbnb, you don't have to be staying in an Airbnb home. You could be staying in a hotel, or you could be staying in your own home.
Is that a challenge to communicate so far?
It hasn't been our focus to communicate that. I mean, we do think there's a lot of synergy between offering a home and an experience, and that's clearly an advantage that we've been leveraging. So that's the part we're focused on communicating. This other stuff is just kind of happening organically, and it's kind of interesting. Maybe it's an opportunity down the road, but not something we've been focused on yet.
So going back to food a little bit, so do you think that it could then become a daily, not daily, but a more frequent use from a food, like experiences is even less frequency than food would be, right?
Yeah.
For a loyal user?
Sure. I mean, I think ultimately, look, we're trying to help outsiders feel like insiders. We're trying to connect them to what's happening in the city and who are the right people to know. And I think all that's quite just as relevant to local people as well. So yeah, I think as our platform has more and more different types of offering, experiences, restaurants, but more to come, as that gets built out, I think it could become something that is more of a regular use, even daily app used by local people long term.
And is Flights launching? I know you've talked about it publicly.
I'm
rare
not,
for a company your size to talk about something that hasn't launched yet.
That's right, and I'm not yet announcing Flights, so nothing's changing there.
So what's the state of the regulatory battles around the world today as we stand here, as we sit here in 2017?
Making progress. We have about 360 different agreements around the world. So quite a few.
These are all city levels mostly?
It varies. So countries like France, UK, Denmark, Portugal, Japan, they all did national type things. Generally speaking, it's at the city level though. A lot of these agreements, the most common take two form. One is an actual policy change, recognizing that short-term rental is permissible, usually under a set of constraints. Most commonly it's focused on people doing this on a part-time basis or with one or two properties, but trying to stay away from people doing it with too many properties at once. In vacation rental markets, that's fine and has been happening for a long time. But in cities, generally trying to ring fence it a little bit, which is totally fine. The other big accomplishment has been the tax agreements. So it was just mentioned, level playing field, pay the taxes. We made that commitment a number of years ago that we're prepared to pay all the hotel taxes in all the different jurisdictions that are willing to work with us to allow us to collect the tax, because to collect tax, you need permission to collect tax. We now have that in so many different places. In the US, 50% of all of our travelers are now covered by these agreements. And that number is rapidly increasing. To date, in the US, we've collected just in the last year, over $250 million. That's newfound revenue for cities. It's a really powerful thing. In Los Angeles alone, in the last year, we've collected $40 million. So, that was just revenue that the city wasn't really in a good place to collect. And now we just send them a lump sum every month.
So what's the other 50% holdout? Like, why would they not want tax revenues?
Well, they're very quickly signing up. New York City is probably the biggest holdout. New York City is passing up over $100 million a year, maybe even a lot more than that.
And the big challenge in New York City is what today?
Well, in New York, on the tax issue, to collect the tax, we need permission to collect the tax. Our critics, the AHLA and all them say, don't let them collect the tax, they'll legitimize their business. And so they're trying to prevent us from playing on a level playing field for fear that will actually legitimize us. I think New York is a tough case. New York, it's had up and downs over the last few years. I think eventually I'm definitely optimistic we'll figure it out. But there's a lot of powerful forces, self-interest involved. So it's just going to take time to figure it out. But what I will say is, in the meantime, it's a real shame for the tens of thousands of New Yorkers who really do depend on this income, who are renting out their apartments, their homes on a part-time basis. Everything that everybody agrees is okay. I mean, even the policymakers say on a part-time basis.
You see the other side, right? You do see the other side.
Of course. And to be clear, we have customized our approach to different cities. In other words, when we started, we had this dream that, if we could just establish the model, maybe everyone will adopt the same model. We're past that now. We're willing to customize the approach to different cities.
Is that a lesson you learned from Uber?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've learned it from Uber. I think our approach has always been to maintain a positive relationship, and it became clear at a certain point that we were going to have to give a little bit more, that we had to be a little bit more flexible. And for example, in New York, we've proactively introduced what we call the one host, one home policy. So in New York, we took down all the properties from hosts that had multiple properties. And so in New York, every host can at most have one property on Airbnb. And so that's a big change we made a little less than a year ago to address some of the concerns that were out there. But still, we haven't seen movement on the policy side. And we haven't seen recognition that there is at least some subset of our user base that should be totally in the clear.
In terms of experiences, obviously a very watched thing by the industry on what you're trying to do there. What if it doesn't work? Is there a plan B?
It's already working. Today, just yesterday, we launched experiences in New York City. We now have 150 experiences here on day one. It's our 40th market to launch since we started back in November. So we've been making good progress. There's about 3,000 of these experiences being offered globally at the moment. We've definitely really focused on quality. So it hasn't been about scale as fast as you can. We've actually had tens of thousands of people apply to offer experiences, and we've only accepted 3,000 so far.
And what's the, how are you vetting it? Because obviously the amount of effort you've put into checks and balances on the home side, on people staying, is it the similar level of effort to make sure that, safety is less of an issue there, but still?
We're putting a lot more effort into the upfront screening, if only because to shape what the brand of this product is. So for example, with our experienced hosts, we want to make sure that everyone on the platform is deeply knowledgeable about whatever it is that they're offering, that it's not just a superficial offering. So that's one of the big things we're looking for, is a real deep domain expertise and understanding of the subject matter. The second thing is we put people through training, how to manage group dynamics, because it's a group with guests from different reservations, and you have different personalities, and you have to think on your feet. And some people need a little bit of schooling there. So we've been a lot more deliberate, especially when you're crafting something new. I think you have to be super hands-on, as we were with the homes in the early days. Over time, as we learn, we can relax it a little bit. On the flip side of the equation, some hosts, experienced hosts, have been remarkably successful. We actually already have a handful of folks who have made $100,000 this year offering experiences, which I think is pretty cool. People taking
because the ticket value is a lot less than, let's say, a room, but obviously there's just a lot more experiences too.
Well, yeah, so like the average ticket value is like $60 per person, but the average trip can do, maybe up to 10 guests or so. And they can offer it as frequently as they want. So, actually we see some people being quite successful even early on, and it's taken off.
So as people use Airbnb for a lot more than stays, they're doing a lot more stays, let's say. Have you thought about a loyalty program?
We've certainly thought about it, absolutely. I think it's frankly surprising that at this point we don't have that. Especially at the very least, I'd love to do more to recognize our loyal travelers. We do have people who have taken 25 trips, 100 trips, who've spent $100,000 on the platform, and I think they deserve some special recognition. So we don't have it. I think we should. Exactly how it looks, though, to be determined. Okay.
So let's get into a topic that we've covered quite a lot in the past, instant booking. One of the biggest, I think, pushes for you has been from a tech and from a user experience perspective, has been instant booking. One, how's the progress as a percentage of the whole thing? I'm seeing a lot more now than I used to, obviously, back in the days. And what's the downside of it, of everything being instant booking?
So, the motivating factor was it's a better experience for guests, meaning that, if they see something, what you don't want is for someone to see something that they want and then find out it's not available. That's the worst case. And we've really moved well beyond those days when in the early days that would happen quite a bit, many years ago. But, with the rise of mobile and all the hosts being on mobile so they can keep the calendars up to date, and now instant booking, you're basically guaranteed if you can see it, you can get it. And that's great for conversion, of course, too. The progress has been, we now have 1.9 million instant bookable properties. We have a little bit over 4 million properties globally, so approaching half of our properties. And it's more than half of our revenue is under the instant booking. So I think it's great progress. I think.
Is there any move to incentivize the host to say, hey, if you do this, we'll lower our fees, et cetera?
We haven't played with fees, no. We have done a lot of experiments, though, on how to incentivize it, how to communicate the benefits of it. So we've done things with our search results and such. Right. I think the downside, or what's been difficult, I should say, is just the change management. If you're a host that had one set of expectations, and then whenever you change expectations about how something works, people can resist that change.
It's a fascinating challenge from a mindset perspective for the host.
Yeah.
Because if that host, let's say they stay in the property or they stay downstairs or whatever they do nearby, random people like hotels is a big challenge. There has been that huge controversy over the last couple of years about some hosts being discriminated, or at least they thought they were being discriminated against. I've had at least one instance where I thought I was. I know you tackled it head on, were very serious about it, have been working on it. One, what's the update? Two, is there a technology solution to it?
Yeah. Well, to close out the instant booking thought, when we look at all the metrics, we see people being just as satisfied when they go through the instant booking versus not. We see them actually sending just as many messages when they go through instant booking versus not.
You mean the host or the
guest? I mean, the level of communication between guest and host when there's instant booking versus not is actually the same. So I think there's some preconceived notions that if you offer instant booking that you're somehow preventing the guest and the host from interacting. And that's actually not true. And another interesting thing is for new hosts coming onto the platform, we default or actually maybe even require them in some cases to be instant bookable. And we've seen no friction there. So it goes to show you if you kind of set the expectations to begin with, it's actually no problem whatsoever. It's only the fact that there's this legacy notion of how it works that is a little bit hard to migrate from. But we've made amazing progress. And it is one of the ways in which we're combating things like discrimination. Because under instant booking, there isn't that moment in time where the host is saying, accept or decline, what should I do?
Yeah.
And is at risk of having social biases. I do think technology and Airbnb can actually play a really big role in fighting social biases and discrimination. There's just a study that came out from Stanford, actually, that showed that our review system actually helps people overcome their social biases. So, I mean, perhaps not surprising.
Explain that.
But when you tell the host objectively, this is a person that has these reviews, and you can read them, that has an impact versus whatever preconceived social biases that they might otherwise have. So I think it's intuitive, but I do think it goes to the whole point of travel to begin with, both for self-growth, but travel makes the world a smaller place. When you bring people together from other parts of the world to understand each other, you overcome the preconceived notions. And I think we're doing that hopefully at a global scale. I think we're doing it hopefully at a micro scale too with some of these social issues. Obviously a huge issue though. We're not going to solve it, but I think we can be on the right side of pushing society in the right direction.
Let's change tracks a little bit. China, you very interestingly changed the name of your China subsidiary. I don't know if that's the phrase.
IBing.
IBing. Sorry, how do you pronounce it again?
IBing.
IBing. How's that going? Because obviously that's a huge market. Do you see a cultural change happening as a result of this, or is it Chinese staying at each other's places, or is it international travelers coming?
Yeah, I'd say we've been focused on China now for 3 to 4 years, so it's been a little while. I'd say there's been 3 phases of our focus. The initial phase was just fix it, because it didn't work. So what I mean by that is, in China, you got Google's blocked, Facebook's blocked. Right. You have a lot of site performance issues. They have different app stores, different payment mechanisms. And so our site just actually didn't work, frankly. And so there was a lot of technical work that we could do from San Francisco to just fix the site. So that was part 1. Part 2 was we established an office in Beijing. And we put a team on the ground, and we started building relationships with government and also getting proper licenses. And all that took a while. But that was the groundwork, basically, for stage 3, where we now have over 100 people on the ground in Beijing, including an engineering team, focused on making those localizations that are extremely powerful. There's a lot of upside to localizing in China. But we've seen a shift. So initially, our focus was on Chinese going outbound, that huge outbound opportunity. I mean, Chinese, as everyone here knows, #1 spender on international travel. And so that was our focus. It played to our strength, meaning we're the only company that has 4 million properties in 191 countries. No local Chinese competitor has that. And so we were purely focused just on that opportunity. It's one that nobody else can really play in. And so that was the focus. What's happened, though, is that Chinese traveler goes abroad, experience this Airbnb, they come back, they have a good experience, and then they start saying, hey, can I do this domestically, right? Now that we have a relationship with a customer, they're asking the question, can I use it to go to Shanghai? Can I use it to go to Guangzhou? And over the last year and a half, we've seen rapid growth in our domestic business. We have over 100,000 properties domestically now in China, and it's a huge percentage of our business. So we've seen a rapid rise in domestic travel, and I think it's an exciting opportunity.
What's the fastest growing market right now, or the most exciting market for you? 'Cause I know you're focused a lot on international growth.
I'd have to say China. I mean, China's just so exciting from the size of the opportunity, the fact that so few Western tech companies are successful there. There's certainly a lot of competition. It's just really interesting.
Any country that has surprised you the most in terms of growth or not? What I was surprised by? I was mentioning it to you, we went to Faroe Islands with my wife and kid last a month and a half ago. 40,000 people live there, 25 to 30 properties. It's not bad. Right.
I mean, yeah, so the power of the Airbnb model is that it can be everywhere, and it's in over 60,000 different cities. And so, yes, it's surprising to me relative to when we started this company that we're so ubiquitous even in Asia. It's been amazing to see the growth in Japan and to see
Which was a huge cultural thing that you had to change.
A huge cultural thing, and to see the national government pass, one of the most favorable short-term rental policies that we've seen, and really embrace that as not just a good opportunity, but an opportunity for them to scale their tourism infrastructure, especially ahead of the Olympics.
Right.
So I think it's really awesome to see this new model be a solution to countrywide kind of level strategic issues, which is, one is, get ready for the Olympics. Two, they have an aging population, and actually seniors is one of our most vibrant demographics. So it's a great opportunity for seniors.
In terms of hosting?
Yeah. Actually, so specifically women over 60 get the best ratings and are growing the fastest. The men aren't far behind, but generally that over 60 demographic, they're just really sweet people. And they have homes, and they're empty nesters. They have the extra bedrooms. And then in Japan, they have 8 million vacant homes. It's a shrinking population. And especially in some of these rural communities, because there's been such a migration to the cities, you have ghost towns. And there are no hotels in these towns, but they are actually great places to go check out. And so there's been a big embrace of Airbnb as a way to get tourism to these more remote regions to revitalize the economy without having to invest in building a full-scale hotel, which would be a huge upfront investment.
So you've put a lot of effort into working with governments and countries when big events happen. Mm-hmm. It's a big thing, obviously, Olympics and stuff.
Huge.
Is that a focus for you, going ahead working with different, big sporting events,
It's a huge opportunity because there's a clear urgency and need. These events just get bigger and bigger, and it's always bigger than the capacity can provide for, and things never go smoothly in terms of building and construction just gets harder and harder as the world gets more crowded. If only there could be big events every day, then life would be a lot easier. One fun random story is just the lunar eclipse that just happened, right? Where the eclipse cut across the country diagonally, across a lot of rural areas, and people from all over the US wanted to be in the path of the eclipse, but there wasn't capacity. But there were many more Airbnb rooms than there were hotels along the path. And in fact, of the Airbnb listings available, half of them were brand new. In other words, they just materialized out of thin air because of the lunar eclipse. Because there was demand, supply materialized. I think that's the powerful thing about the model, and why events are so appealing to us, is when there's a well-articulated demand and need, the broader population sees it, and they understand it, and they say, hey, I could participate in that.
Also the solar glasses. Tons of money got made off it.
Totally.
Last question, and then we're going to go to the questions from the audience. Over-tourism is a phrase that we have talked about a lot. You and I talked about it on the phone as well. Airbnb's role is interesting. It obviously helps spread people outside of the main areas, but it could potentially lead to crowding in some areas as well, or at least the potentially could be. So how do you think about over-tourism and Airbnb's role in helping, or the pros and cons of it?
I mean, I think this is an issue that the entire industry really needs to face collectively, in the sense that tourism is only going to grow. There's going to be more and more people who have the money and want to travel. And so if this is an issue now, then I think it's on all of us to get ahead of it. I actually think Airbnb can be a big part of the solution. Already we see that most Airbnb properties are outside of typical kind of hotel districts, the typical downtown core. And so one way you deal with over tourism is you increase the surface area, right? You get people spread out more. And that can mean two things. One, it can mean different neighborhoods within the city, and that's what we see a lot of today. It can also be promoting new rural destinations. And in a lot of those rural destinations, there isn't the infrastructure. There hasn't been the level of investment. But again, that's where the Airbnb long tail can really come in, like your experience going to that island up north.
Yeah.
They
can't build hotels because their season is 3 months.
Right. So it doesn't warrant that level of investment, but there are 35 Airbnb homes up there, and that's enough to at least start. We just did a study recently of 11 countries, and across those 11 countries, we sent $1 billion of bookings into rural communities. So I think that's pretty cool, and something we can do a lot more of, is to really help promote some of these other destinations. And frankly, governments, that's one of the things governments are really eager to work with us on, is how do we promote destinations that aren't typical tourist destinations, because it is a huge driver of the economy. They want that tourism. They just wish they could spread it around a little bit more evenly, and I think that's a way in which we can help.
Questions? I know, Slido, you want to put up on the screen? So, I have to look, unfortunately, this is how I have to do it. Could you talk about pivoting from the original room sharing model to a business with a revenue, commercial landlord driven by one unit, by more than one unit? You may have answered it, but because certainly in New York, you're doing one host, one house policy. The question is, could you talk about pivoting from the original room sharing model? So room sharing versus the whole house, I guess certainly has that changed dramatically? Sure.
I mean, I think what we've found over the years is that, there's many different types of experiences that can be offered. There's many kind of experiences that are in demand. And so, it used to be just about the private room and then the entire home. And then someone wanted to put a treehouse up, and that was amazingly popular. And so, we've tried not to be too limited in terms of what we allow. That being said, we've never really focused on growing through large-scale property managers in urban areas. We've never made a concerted effort to do that. Partially because we know it's a sensitive topic. And furthermore, at this stage in our regulatory discussions, we've been more than willing to draw boundaries and say, what, we want to have a long-term positive relationship. If for whatever reason this is something that, is going to be a sticking point, let's draw some lines. And if we have to, cut off some of the hosts or cap some of the nights, then that's just a compromise I guess we'll have to make. So I know there were some stories, and maybe this was announced, I don't know if you talked publicly, of Airbnb talking to real estate companies to allocate some % in some of the new buildings to Airbnb as a way to offset revenues. I don't know if that was, I think Wall Street Journal did some story maybe a few months ago. Is that something you're thinking through? Yeah, I think that's a very exciting opportunity for all, which is to say, listen, there's a lot of these residential towers where the landlord wants to have, and the residents, they want to have a lot of visibility into who's in the building for safety concerns. So hey, can we partner and give you that visibility, give you the assurance that we have reasonably vetted the people coming, and let the building owner put some reasonable constraints around it. If they want a maximum duration, a minimum duration, a certain number of nights a year, you can just specify a policy and we'll uphold that. And there could even be a revenue share. And in fact, I feel like this is a marketing opportunity for these large buildings, and some of them have found this to be true, whereby they offer home sharing as an amenity. So is that for now an idea stage, or is it actually happening? No, it's live. There's many buildings that support it. There's a few over in Jersey City that have adopted this, and we're openly encouraging more buildings, more developers to participate. And it's one of those things that takes a while to prove out initially, and it's been out in the market now for a couple of years. But I really expect it to start taking off.
How are you thinking about business travel? This I forgot. Business travel, group travel, meetings. I know you're putting putting a lot of effort into Airbnb for business.
Yeah, business travel is going really well. We have over 250,000 small businesses who have signed up to our business travel platform, 18,000 new companies a week, so it's pretty crazy scale. It's about 15% of our nights now, which is a lot of progress from when we started, when it was about 10% of our nights. So it's really taken off. I think the use case we see it being most popular for is kind of the longer stay, so like 1 week or more. If you're on a business trip for that period of time, you really, I think, prefer the comforts of home, having your own space and a little extra space. We also see a lot of people extending their trip by a couple of days and making kind of a bleisure trip. It's business during the week, but they want to stay the weekend, explore, and when they're exploring, they want to be, in a real neighborhood. They don't want to be just downtown.
A lot of people have been saying, but, duty of care.
We've got that.
You drop that phrase anywhere, everybody goes silent. That's the best phrase in all.
Well, we've got duty of care. So part of the whole Airbnb for Business platform provides easy billing, so the employees don't have to enter payment information. It gets invoiced right into the company.
Yeah.
2, you can specify certain rules about what they can book. 3, we got the duty of care requirements met. And so, they can have visibility into where employees are staying in case of an emergency or something. Yeah, that is part of why you're seeing such mass adoption.
Yeah. Last question.
And employers are saving money too.
I would imagine, yeah.
So they like it.
Last one. Do you use Airbnb yourself? I think I know the answer to that one, but go ahead.
Yes.
When have you not used Airbnb? That's the question.
I went to Disney World 2 weeks ago with my family, so I stayed on the
Are there a lot of properties around, Airbnb properties?
Yeah, in the surrounding area, but I didn't rent a car. I just wanted to walk everywhere. I wanted to take the monorail.
Yeah.
No, but generally I always stay on Airbnbs. I'm staying on Airbnb here. I'm an Airbnb host. I got a turnover today, so someone's checking out, someone else is checking in. There's a 3-hour window in which my cleaner will be there, turning it over. So yeah, I'm fully in it.
What's the IPO date?
I don't know.
2018, April?
I don't know.
All right.
What an ending. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.